Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Wednesday, June 24th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Time to kick off our midweek show with our focus today starting with the complete takeover of the Democratic Party, certainly in New York City, by America-hating communists. Yep, that's the biggest news story today. And if you don't believe me, I implore all of you to continue listening because I'll validate my position to you very, very soon as to why this is happening. And they got three candidates through in New York City. Claire Valdez, Brad Lander, and Daria Liza Avila Chevalier. I don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry. Anyways, these are the three that got through. Two incumbents were removed from office, Dan Goldman being one of them. And to me, it doesn't come off as a big shock. But what is interesting to me, I'd have to say, is that Zoran Mamdani, as ridiculous as he is, as useless and incompetent as he is, he can garner votes. Now, why is that, do you think? Why did these three get through? Well, they hold such radical positions. And I'm reading in this article in the Associated Press, and it's talking about this one voter, and again, I don't know if this is indicative of all the voters in New York City. Maybe it is in this primary race. But he said one of the biggest reasons for voting for the candidate that he voted for was the Palestinian cause. Now, I took me back a little bit. I said, really? That's your number one cause? Living in New York City. That's your number one issue? It's what is taking place in the Middle East, 6,000 miles away from us, not in your own city? And by the way, all these candidates came out, of course, against the state of Israel. It's obviously been a very close issue of contention with many Americans, especially those on the left. Now, as most of you know, I speak out against this war because, again, I find it to be an illegal war with Iran, of course, and I obviously despise what's taking place inside of Gaza right now, the West Bank and Lebanon. I'm opposed to all of it. I believe in people's sovereignty. I believe in people's right to govern themselves. I also believe in the UN Charter Article 242. All right, that states clearly that Israel has to live within its own borders. Again, not taking land from others. But when we see things, for instance, in this particular issue, at least 73,000 dead, that number is clearly an underestimate of what the real number is. 100,000 at least right now is the latest number I've heard, but they believe it to be at least 200,000 now. Now, young people see this, and by the way, the young people are the main voters of these far leftists. And they're hyper-focused on this issue. Again, I'm not saying that should happen. Obviously not. I told you before, I believe in people's sovereignty. I believe in people's ability to govern themselves. I don't think people should be at the will of somebody else. But this is the reason why you're voting for these candidates, not because of the economy, not schooling, not affordable housing, nothing like that? Nothing? Really? And this just tells me, number one, that the young people in this country are not focused on the right issues, by and large. Now, we are in a Gen Z revolution, like that or not. This is the upcoming generation, right? They are the ones that are going out in large numbers, and they're voting right now. Now, I didn't vote until I was 30. And the first time I voted was for President Trump. Yep, the year I turned 30, I voted for President Trump. I never voted before that. I never felt I had a reason to. I wasn't involved in politics. I never paid attention to the news, really. But what Trump did was very, very groundbreaking. It was a watershed moment, really. I said, this candidate actually speaks our language. And by the way, I wasn't, the genius I am today with the information I provide you. But it got me involved in it. It got me thinking. I said, wait a minute, this is a candidate that can make some change in this country. Change away from the old ways, the old establishment. And I believe President Trump could have done that. I believed he would take our economy in a better direction than Obama did. And by the way, I didn't care for Obama at all. I thought he was horrible, just like I thought Biden was horrible. And I wasn't fond of Bush. Again, all these things that are happening. But Trump was the candidate that said, I'm going to step away from the establishment. I am someone different. I cannot be bought. And I think that's largely why he was successful. Drain the swamp. We all wanted that. We all thought that this could be kind of like a revelation in this country. It could kickstart something brand new. Make America great again. America first. We'd not heard this from candidates in my lifetime. But what I'm expecting from this younger group of people, a lot of them are very, I guess, humanitarian driven, if you will. And what they see on the social media apps is something that's greatly influencing them. And once you see what's taking place in Gaza, or in the West Bank, or in Lebanon, or in Iran, it's causing these young people to react to that. And so instead of voting, for instance, for a better economy, an economy that works for us, more job opportunities, more availability to housing at a cheaper price. You know, you love to hear the word affordability from them. But I told you before, this is going to be a Gen Z takeover very, very soon. Again, both parties are going to look very different in the next 10 or so years. They're going to be very, very different parties. And I think the Republican Party will have to change as well. I do believe that. I think President Trump stepped back over the line with the establishment. And he had done so a little bit in his first term, but he had a successful first term. I will say that to you. He did have a successful first term. He had a lot of energy behind him. He's a much different candidate than he is today. Again, that's just the way it is. But when you listen to some of these candidates that just won in New York City, it takes you back a second. So you say, okay, so you're all about what's taking place in Israel and the Palestinian cause, but what about any other issues? What else do these candidates really actually stand for? Now, again, these are all Bernieites. These are all Bernie Sanderites, if you want to call them that. Again, they're mostly younger people whose minds have been corrupted by, again, the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, the ill-in-the-head Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all the members of the squad, whose vitriol has been plastered and has spread nonstop on left-wing airwaves since 2016, when the dunce himself, Bernie Sanders, ran for president. Before that, he would go on TV, he'd go on I remember I saw him on Bill O'Reilly's show a couple times. Again, everyone would, just punt him around like the idiot he is because, again, his ideas don't work. But now you try to explain that to a young person. Again, someone who's fresh out of college, or maybe they're in college, or maybe they're just fresh out of high school. And they hear, free this, free that, free everything, go after those greedy billionaires, this and that. People listen to that. When you're young, you're impressionable. Oh, wow, free this, free that, great, free housing. Oh, well, I like that. Rent freeze in New York City, I'll take it. I'll take a free grocery store, why not? Now, there's a couple other reasons why a lot of these left-wingers are getting voted into. Don't misunderstand me. You could think illegal immigration, especially into these blue cities and these blue states that don't cooperate with ICE. Think New York City, where all these candidates are winning. Think Chicago. Think Los Angeles. Think San Francisco. Look who's leading in that Democratic race. Scott Wiener, one of the most vile human beings ever to live on this planet, belongs in prison, not in Congress. Look at Seattle. Look at Katie Wilson's success. Look at Minnesota. Jacob Frey gets to run roughshod over the people there. Again, anti-ICE. Look at Portland, home of Antifa. Then add in the leftist college professor's rhetoric against America. Always, America's a awful place to live. If it feels good, do it. Do it some more. And then minus, of course, any relationship with Christianity in these cities. That's been waning, especially in the younger generations, for quite some time now. That's how you get an AOC. That's how you get a Jamal Bowman. By the way, what did Jamal Bowman do before he got into his brief stint in Congress? What did he do? Does anyone remember? Does anybody know? Oh, that's right. He was a principal. There it goes, folks. Doesn't run too far away from each other. They go hand in hand. And yet we have to ask ourselves, though, why would these far-left candidates win against the establishment incumbent Democrats? What are they offering? So in other words, what can they offer this young generation? Why is this so appealing to put these people into power? Let's listen to Brad Lander. He's one of the ones that won yesterday. And this is him speaking. And I want you to hear exactly what points he focuses on. And we'll break it down afterwards. Take a listen.
Last Thursday, I gave a name to that spirit that has been moving in New York City. I said it was solidarity. I said it was the force we need to vanquish our biggest foes. And I don't mean Wemby and the Spurs. Solidarity is the force that we need to vanquish Trump's fascism, to abolish ICE, and to stand up to the billionaires who are rigging our economy.
So in other words, you got to go after the billionaire class. You're going to raise taxes. That's number one. So he's learned from Bernie Sanders. He's learned from Robert Reich, all these other people. AOC is another influence, I'm sure, on this dunce. Abolish ICE. So again, we have no border. We have no sovereignty. If we have no border, we have no sovereignty. We can allow anybody to come in here and stay here. We have no country. The country gets taken out of that. That's the point of the Democratic Party today. This is exactly what they want, and this is what they push for. And by the way, effeminate much? My God. Can we get someone in this party that maybe has some testosterone in them? Maybe just a little bit? That would be pretty nice, don't you think, folks? Probably not going to happen anytime soon. Too many soy lattes at Starbucks, I'd have to say. But then I go over and I think about, okay, what's the other candidates? What else are these other candidates pushing for? What is Claire Valdez, who nobody's ever heard of until, of course, she ran in this race and she stood next to Mamdani and Sanders. Who is she and what does she want? But again, I looked at a little rundown about what she ran on. And again, it's like listening to Bernie Sanders. Abolishing ICE, okay. Ending U.S. deportation and detention machine. Again, this is what she's running on. So in other words, again, anyone who comes across that border can become an American. Fine. They love it. Amnesty for all. This is what they want. This is what they'll vote for. They will do everything they can to deball ICE and, of course, deball the Department of Homeland Security. 100%. You can't get around that. Universal health care, so a single-payer system. Health care for all. So, in other words, it's that group think, right? Everybody can access. No one will be turned away from health care, even though we know in this country, folks, illegal aliens go get free health care all the damn time. Why do you think their premiums are going up? If anyone can go and utilize the emergency room, which again was done under the Reagan administration, by the way, anybody can go get free health care if they want, should they choose to. So there's, again, universal health care. By the way, how did the Affordable Care Act work out? Are we getting more affordable health care? Again, this is what the Democrats pushed on us. Nancy Pelosi didn't want to go over the 1,000 pages of it. But again, they jammed it through. They got it passed. Obama signed it into law. And since then, you're seeing premiums rising 50, 60% from what they were back in, as far as I can look at, 2011, 60% higher on average. You're paying more for health care in a 15-year span of time. Then again, it varies within policy, but again, you're looking at a 50 to 60% increase in healthcare since it. So it's not gotten more affordable, it's gotten more unaffordable. But leave that to the Democrats to sell that to you. But again, everyone pays into the system. That's fine. What about the people that continue to not pay into the system? What do? They're going to still utilize it. And when you allow people to utilize a system that don't pay into it, you end up footing that bill. Never forget that. Anyways, affordable housing for all. So again, here we go. This is the Zoran Mamdani approach, of course. Affordable housing for all. What does that mean, affordable housing for all? Does that have anything to do with the $20 minimum wage that Bernie Sanders is pushing? Is that going to be affordable for everyone to own a home in New York City now, or have cheaper rent? Is that what it's all about? What are their plans for this? Again, it's going to be city control. That's what they're going to push for. The city, the state is going to control the housing. That's what Mamdani was pushing for. Again, he used, I think, some Sweden model for what his approach was. Again, he's not made good on that yet. Thank God for that. But this is what they're pushing for. That's what affordable housing for all. The government controls the housing. Can you imagine if HUD was controlling the housing for the entirety of the country? Yeah. Let that sink in. Just like, again, the affordable health care for everybody. So-called universal health care. And by the way, if you want to see what healthcare would look like in this country, go try utilizing the DMV. See how good that service is. Yeah, you want to see how much worse it would be if the government controlled every aspect of healthcare? Again, this is about taking down a system. It's about destroying a system. We at one point had the best healthcare program in the entire world, which means the entirety of civilization. We had the best healthcare in the world. And of course, it dwindled because of what Obama did. 100%. Ending Israel's war on Palestine. That's one you'll hear time and time again from these candidates. Again. But this is who they are. This is, again, all their policies really go back and forth on this. So did you hear anything about how they're going to do this? How are they going to give us cheaper health care? What are they going to do? Are they going to get more doctors? Are they going to get more hospitals up and running in these cities? What are they going to do? How are we going to have more affordable housing? Are you going to, again, take down dilapidated housing, put new housing up? Who's going to pay for that, by the way? They have no answers to what they claim to care about. That's who they are. And by the way, this one too, this Claire Valdez. Again, you could look at her and say, oh yeah, definite communist. Definite communist right here. Full on commie. I want to play you a clip from back in May. And this is her talking about trans rights. This is a topic that's not going to go away too, by the way. This runs quite a bit of time. I'll play a little bit for you until I can get a little bit of the points that I think she's trying to make here, and then we'll break it down afterwards. Listen to this.
The people who do that are absolute cowards and are betraying the entire working class when they do it. And we've seen Democratic, politicians think that they can, trade trans people away for, a bigger share of, I don't even know what electorate they're trying to win back when they do that. What the labor movement teaches us is that we are all in this together. We're only as strong as we are when we stand together. And Sean Fain talks about this quite a bit, like when you're on the line, when you're on the shop floor, you do not care what the person next to you looks like, what their gender is, which bathroom they use. They are your coworker, and you are organizing together against the boss. And that's absolutely the mindset that we all have to have in this moment, our solidarity.
So let's pause for a second. Again, this runs a little bit longer. Notice what she just said to you. And you can't see this, but I can. But she's speaking to this dunce who looks like he just crawled out of the dumpster and hasn't showered for weeks. But behind her in this clip, it says UAW, United Auto Workers. When she moved to New York City, she became part of this labor unit in 2019. And her stupid head is in the way, but it says, stand up, unite the working class. And it says May Day 2028. I think is what it says. Or maybe it says 2026. I can't see it, unfortunately. Probably says 2026. But this is who this woman is. She's a communist. This is what they want. They want unions to organize against the people that own the businesses. This is what they want. So in other words, she says, you and I are standing next to each other. It's you and I against the guy who owns the business or the gal who owns the business. Isn't that remarkable? You're working for a company and you hate the people that run the company, the people that put all the capital in the company, the people that have created a model that allows you to work for them. I mean, it's like these people skipped Economics 101. I don't understand these people at all. Again, if you don't like your boss, you don't have to work there. You can go work someplace else, or you can start your own business if you're such a genius. But these people have never produced anything. Again, it's the Bernie Sanders approach. Never produced a damn thing in his entire life. Now, he's done well for himself in politics. He's robbed lots of money. He's a multi-millionaire. Owns 3 houses. He's done well for himself. Not too bad for a dunce from New York City who moved to Vermont to destroy that state. This is who these people are. So when you get a Bernie Sanders, right, talk about pay their fair share. Everyone's going to pay their fair share. This is who these people are. They don't understand. What does fair share mean? What fair share of somebody's physical labor, mental and intellectual labor, does the government have a right to? That's a question you should be asking yourself. They would take it all if they could. And that's what Bernie Sanders is pushing for. That's why he's so excited about getting these allies into the House. This is exactly what he wants. This is exactly what's going on. They're putting people up against business owners. And they want everybody to be a part of some sort of union. because, again, that generates revenue to the union. The union puts money into these candidates. These candidates get lots of financial capital, and they end up getting them elected to office. This is the way they want it to work, through and through. Let's continue.
Is exactly where we derive our strength. And so when we talk about, trans rights and bodily autonomy, and we talk about universal programs like social housing, like Medicare for all, like all of these programs, we know that trans people and trans youth especially are often the highest at risk for homelessness, for retaliation at their jobs. And so we have to be, focused, really enshrining their rights as we do, within universal programs, and making sure that Medicare for all includes, gender affirming care and health care for trans folks. We need to make sure that we're enshrining the rights in a trans bill of rights and in workplaces, and making sure that there's real social housing that is available for. All
right, so she continues on. This woman's a mess. Gender affirming care access program. What the hell does that mean? It means you can change your, cut this off, cut that off, sew this on. Who's going to pay for this, by the way? A trans bill of rights? What the hell's wrong with these people? But that sounds appealing to the average IQ Democrat, right? Oh, everyone's got to feel welcome. Unless they're a conservative Republican or a straight white man. Right? Right? Yeah. Straight conservative white Christian man. They hate us. Can you imagine saying that to her? Well, what about them? Are you going to put a bill forth for this minority in the country now? Watch your head explode when you ask her that one. Ask old Bernie Sanders. What would he say about that? Well, let me tell you. First, we need to tax the top 10 of 1%. Once we tax them, continue to tax them, we will create more revenue, and we will put it more in our pockets right now. That's Bernie Sanders' approach to everything. Tax, tax, tax again. Where's all this money we're taxing going then? Why are things not improving? Bernie, I mean, you've been in Congress since 1991. Why have none of these policies come to fruition? Why are they not making America a better place since you've been there? What bills has Bernie Sanders put forth that have allowed this great takeover of the Democratic Party to make everyone's life better? Why have they not shown it to us yet? Because it doesn't work. Look at this. Trans people who are at most risk of being homeless, again, who are the people on the streets more than less? People that have mental issues. There you go, folks. There you go. Or kicked out of their homes. There you go. Again, how are they fixing homelessness in New York City? What did Zoran do for the homeless in wintertime? Oh, yeah, he let them stay on the streets because he refused to house them. Doesn't want to put anyone against, their own wishes to stay outside. And what do you have? 18, 19, 20 people freeze to death this last winter because they were unhoused? It was a cold winter, too, folks. I guess climate change didn't creep up on us at wintertime this year, unfortunately for him. So this is what's taking over the Democratic Party, folks, and I highlight this to you for several reasons. One, because we have a split going on right now in the Republican Party. We have Conservative Inc., people that think Trump can do no wrong. And then we have other people that are saying, wait a minute, what's going on? Why are we focused on what's going on in Iran? Why are we even in Iran? What's the purpose for this? Why are we not focusing on our own economy, our own border, our own immigration problems, building up the middle class? Why are we not focused on this? Getting jobs back to the United States. And where are the mass deportations, by the way, too? That's another question I always have. Never seems to get answered, unfortunately. But this brings me to my next point here. The Republican Party has got to unite at some point here. Now, again, whether America First becomes an offshoot like the Democratic Socialist of America, who the candidates I just named to you are all a part of. Again, they're communists. So again, in other words, they're taking over the party. They are the future of the party. This is where the party is going. So they hide themselves as Democrats, but they're really communists through and through. And they'll put every tactic they can, packing the Supreme Court, statehood for Puerto Rico, and whatever other state they want to make a state. But again, this is their plan. This is what they want to do. Oh, D.C. and Puerto Rico. That's right, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Again, packing the courts, getting rid of the Electoral College. Kamala Harris was just on a podcast the other day talking about that, how we get rid of it. This is who they are. So they pretend they're Democrats, but they're really not. It's, again, their tactic to get people to think, oh, this is a liberal party. They don't stand for liberty, folks. They don't stand for classic liberalism. They're not for that at all. They're for a takeover. They're for power. They're for control. That's why Bernie Sanders does what he does. It's all about power. He doesn't give a damn about anybody else but his own self. He's corrupt as the next person in line. Anyways, what we're seeing, though, we're seeing the sanctuary states that, by the way, they should be completely deemed as unconstitutional, by the way. That's first and foremost. The other part about this is look who is living in these cities now. You're getting a lot of foreign-born people living in New York City, in L.A., in San Francisco, in Portland, Seattle, other parts of the country. Go look at Minnesota. All these other cities, these blue cities and blue states that have these, I guess you call them laws or mandates that don't allow ICE to come in and do their job. Again, we saw what took place in Minnesota earlier this year. And the ridiculous people that go along with it, that have been brainwashed so very cleverly by the establishment itself. That being said, you're seeing people that produce leaving these blue states and they're heading to red states. And I don't just say this out of the blue. It's backed by science. It's backed by the fact of the matter. This comes from Moneywise. It says Americans aren't just swapping zip codes now. They're triggering a massive multi-trillion-dollar wealth migration that is reshaping the nation's economic map. This is remarkable. This comes from Unleash Prosperity, co-founder Stephen Moore, who's a great economist, by the way. And he says that more than $2 trillion in adjusted gross income migrated from blue states to red states between 2012 and 2023. So this is prior to COVID, where we saw lots of migration of people leaving these blue states. So this was set in motion a long, long time ago. But just think about it. In an 11-year span of time, you have $2 trillion leaving blue states, and they're going to red states. As of late, you're seeing which states really starting to boom. You're seeing Texas really booming. You're seeing Florida really starting to boom. And by the way, the Southeast itself is starting to get lots and lots of wealth trickling into these states. Again, they're all red states. I don't think that's a coincidence, folks. And when you have freedom, which, by the way, my former great state of California once was the freest state in the union, you saw California booming economically. And that's why it's the powerhouse it is today. It wasn't because of Democratic policy. From 1899 to 1959, that whole state was as red as could possibly be. I mean, that's how red California was. It was a Republican-run state. That's when California saw its massive growth. You saw the growth of Hollywood. You saw lots of business capital. You see lots of, for instance, the oil in California starting up, being utilized. All these things, by the way. Again, so many different businesses, so many different headquarters and what have you, all coming into California. That's undeniable. Now, of course, in the 1960s, things began to change. After World War II, you have lots more Democrats coming into the state of California, and slowly but surely, and then on top of that, in the 1960s, you have an open southern border. You have a welfare system come in, and you have issues with that coming in, and then the state's demographics, the political establishment, it begins to change. Unfortunately, for the worst. And that's why you have a Gavin Newsom there today. So that's why that's all taking place. But this is amazing to me, though. The Florida alone accounted for a staggering $1.29 trillion gain in adjusted gross income from inbound immigration, according to this chart of which they put together. And in comparison, New York, again, a leftist-run state. New York City, look who's winning races there. California, same thing. Look what just happened in the LA mayoral race. Oh, my God. If that's not a reason to pass the SAVE Act, I don't know what is. But California, they posted some of the largest losses, roughly at $660 billion and $503 billion, respectively. So that's a massive transfer of wealth out of these states. And again, it's going elsewhere. Now, what does the data tell us? Again, while taxes play, obviously, a very big role in this relocation decision-making, people are thinking, why stay in California? Why would I pay 13.3% when I can go live in Texas or Florida or Nashville and Tennessee and pay Zero state income tax. Why would I tax myself an extra 10% if I'm earning over $1 million? Why would I do that? Doesn't seem to make any bit of any sense. Now, if you got the capital and you love California, by the way, California is a beautiful state. And if you've lived there your entire life and you have the money, you say, okay, I'll bite the bullet. I'll stay here. But young people are saying this, why would I stick around for this? I can't buy a house. The median house in California now is $930,000. Yeah, good luck paying for that. You're not going to be able to afford that, especially if you're just starting out. It's not going to happen unless you have a great job ahead of you. But then you have to look at the schooling system. That's another thing people are looking at right now. Obviously, if you have the second worst public schools in the country, what's the pull to go to California? Why would you want to put your kids in a school system that promotes things like the LGBTQ, XYZ, WTUV agenda, right? Look at that. Again, teaching you what? Teaching you what to think, not versus how to think. That's a big problem. And I could say that to you because, again, I saw education in California right up in front, right up close and center. I saw it all right in front of my eyes, how everything's run. And again, it's sad. I said this on the program yesterday. California had the best public schools in the 1940s, the 1950s, and the 1960s in this country. Number one. California led the state. And by the way, who was leading the state at the time? It was the Republicans, of course. That's no more. And so people look at these things, though. They look at infrastructure. Look at California's infrastructure, second worst in the country. Why would you stick around for that? Number one homelessness population is in California. Again, why would you want this? Law and order, where is it in California? Now it's getting a little bit better in LA. They have a better DEA now. Nathan Hawkman tends to follow the law, which is good, even though he ran it as a Democrat, which I didn't like. But this is what gets people to say, do I want to live in this metropolis anymore? Do I want to stay in California? Do I want to live here? Why am I staying here? I can go get good weather in Florida, South Florida, if I want. And it's a red state. So people are weighing these options. Now they're saying, am I going to stick around? Am I going to stay? Or am I going to go someplace else where I can afford? That's what it comes down to. What can I afford? What are the opportunities? Is it cheaper to live? Is it a better quality of life? Then I'm going to go there. And people are looking at what's going on in California. By the way, I know a lot of people who, once they retired, they got the hell out of California as quickly as they could. They just didn't want to do it. It just wasn't going to happen. I thought to myself, that's so sad. You lived your whole life in California. You bought a house here. You have a family here. Everything you know is here, and you're going to leave, pack up and leave when you're 60, 65 years old. But I knew a lot of people who did that. And I said to myself at the time, I said, is this going to be me someday? Am I going to just, live here my whole life and then all of a sudden just go someplace else? What is that? What are my options? What else is out there? And by the way, California has many great things to offer people. Don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful state, even though Gavin Newsom has destroyed it. But you got to weigh your options, folks. And by the way, the Brookings Institute analysis of the pandemic-era migration, right, this is what followed afterwards, found that Americans increasingly moved towards lower-cost Sunbelt metro areas as remote work gave many households greater freedom to relocate. Put another way, the metropolitan hubs like New York are expensive and remote workers have options. So in other words, why stay in New York City when you can go live in Miami or go live in North Carolina or South Carolina or someplace else where it's nice and warm? Why would you go there? And that's why you're seeing the population of Florida beginning to rise. Because, again, it's the freest state in the union right now. Again, DeSantis has done a great job. He's done a couple things I disagree with. The red flag gun laws, the boycott and divestment of Israel. Again, I don't know why he went to Israel and signed that bill. It's a little bit worrisome, but nonetheless, those are just a couple things he did that I disagree with. Other than that, the guy's great. Now he's talking about getting rid of property taxes in the state. You want to talk about a ploy to move there. That is something why people will get to Florida. I mean, don't twist my arm behind my back. I mean, this is freedom, though. Freedom attracts people that love to be free, that can govern themselves. And by the way, Florida has some of the best public schools now in the nation. Now, we say that when our national standards are dropping significantly, but nonetheless, they're some of the best public schools in the country. And again, so this begs the question, who's moving into these blue cities now? It's the people that, illegal aliens, yeah, absolutely, or people that believe in the values of that. Believe that we shouldn't have a southern border or borders at all. Don't believe in ICE. Believe that we should tax the hell out of billionaires. So again, why would the billionaires stay in New York City when they can go to Florida? Or they can go to Nashville? Or they can go someplace in Texas? I mean, again, Texas is booming right now as well. In fact, Texas kicked off, I think it was the, what was it? Oh, I forgot the list. It totally kicked California out of the top of the list, though. For the number one state, for the most, what was it? Oh, I can't think of it right now. It'll come to me in just a little bit. But Texas had, I think it was Texas had the most headquarters of the top, I can't think of it. Regardless of what I'm saying to you, Texas is growing. There's more headquarters now going to Texas than there are in California. I forget what the list is called. It's not the S&P 500 list. Oh, it'll come to me in a little bit. But this is what's going on right now. And people are moving with their feet. They're voting with their feet. They're voting with their wallets. They're saying, I'm not going to stick around for this. I don't need to stick around for this. Or, hey, I'll just get out of New York City. I'll go to the Hamptons. I'll do that. I'll go to, downstate New York. I won't stay in New York City if this is going to be the way that this city's going to be run. I'll just leave and I'll avoid Mamdani. I'll get the hell out of there and I'll do elsewhere. I can do that. I have the capital and money and the resources to do it. I can move my business elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in New York City, the financial capital of the world, which is run by a communist Muslim now. That being said, where does this leave us now globally? What do people think when they see the United States? Let's look at this article out of the Gateway Pundit right now, and we're seeing a shift right now all throughout Latin America. We just had a recent shift in Colombia too, by the way. And a far-right lawyer named De La Espriella, I believe I say his name, or Esprilla, excuse me, defeated the leftist Ivan Capetxa to become Colombia's new president. And again, this is a newcomer. This guy was endorsed by Trump. Again, I don't know why Trump is endorsing foreign candidates. Nonetheless, ran on a platform of tougher security, ending peace talks with rebel groups, expanding oil and gas production, lowering taxes, directly reversing some of the policies of the outgoing leftist president, Gustavo Petro. Now, with the shift in Colombia now we have 9 Latin American countries now that have right-leaning governments. And by the way, if you look in 2023, the entirety of Latin America primarily was all run by leftists. So we're seeing a great big shift now in Latin America policies and people who are running these countries. Again, look at El Salvador, Ecuador, Guatemala, Paraguay, Uruguay. Again, they're moving away from the leftist control. And again, as a result, roughly 13 of the Latin America's 18 major countries had left-leaning or center-left governments. So things are shifting, things are changing from 2023 till present day. We're seeing people moving away from the socialist ideologies. They don't want this anymore. They see how clean El Salvador is right now and how things have changed since, again, you had people like Bukele getting rid of MS-13. Of course, we still have MS-13 in our country. How they can fix it there and not here is a question I have, and I'm sure you do too. But we're seeing a shift in the Western Hemisphere away from leftism. So I ask myself, well, then how do we get, for instance, how do we get what's going on in New York City or in Seattle or in an LA or in any other part of the country? The reason for that is very simple, because we have allowed these people to come into our country illegally. How many people came in under Biden? 12 to 20 million illegal aliens. Where did they go? To the blue cities and the blue states primarily. This is where they went. They are voting for these policies. Hey, get rid of ICE? Perfect. I can stay here forever now. Hey, you're going to give us more money? Hey, Gavin Newsom is going to give us $250 million to access healthcare for free? I don't have to do a damn thing. I don't even pay into the system myself. Sounds good. And by the way, ICE can't touch me. It's a sanctuary state. LA is a sanctuary city. Beautiful. I don't have to worry about a damn thing. I'll just keep voting for these Democrats. And hey, this is like living in paradise versus where I came from. Doesn't matter to me. I'll leech off the system. This is the problem about where we are today. So that's why I want to come full circle with you and explain to you that this is why this is happening. First of all, these countries have kicked a lot of these people out. Some of them have emptied their jails and sent these people here. We had some awful crime waves, especially happening during COVID. But again, who was in charge? It was Joe Biden. They didn't stop anybody. We had 15,000 people on average coming to this country every single day. And that's on top of the 25 or so million that have already lived here. So if you want to evade police or get detection, or if you want to say, hey, our local police isn't going to be following federal immigration law, so if you're caught without a driver's license, we'll just send you on your way afterward. We can't do anything about it. So we have people that hate the country, people that want to tear down the country, and this is the way they do it. And of course, this is the way they stay in power. This is the plan for the Democrats. And so I say this to you for several reasons. Number one, where are we with the SAVE Act? And this brings me to my next article out of the Hill. Take a listen to this. It says, Senate GOP headed for a showdown with Trump over the Save America Act and the Iran deal. So there was a big blow with what took place with the Iran deal that just came by. And, you know, this is, again, something that's very, very important that we understand. We had the War Powers Resolution pass to limit Trump's ability to, again, wage war in Iran. That's a big blow to him. That's the way Congress works, though. And they had enough votes to stop what's going on, at least. They passed this resolution. Whether or not that sticks, only time will tell. But President Trump and Republican senators are headed for now a collision today on Wednesday, when they will now be meeting up on Capitol Hill to discuss two major sources of strain. First and foremost, the Save America Act, which, again, I want passed. I think this is common sense. We should have voter ID laws in this country, in every one of our 50 states. But Republican senators are now bracing themselves for an unpredictable and potentially heated discussion as tensions have been building with the president for weeks now. The meeting will give Trump critics within the GOP conference a chance to air their grievances, like they did during an explosive meeting with Attorney General Todd Blanche just last month. Yet most Republicans are reluctant to challenge President Trump, or especially at least to his face, after watching him and the political careers of Senators Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, again, think of Thomas Massey, what their future could be if Trump goes to oppose them. That's what it comes down to. So they got to do it in a civil sort of way. But the biggest disagreement between Trump and so many of these Senate Republicans centers on whether or not John Thune, our Senate Majority Leader, should abolish the filibuster. This is going to be very, very big. Now, some people are saying, yes, they should. Let's get this through. We have enough votes for just a majority vote, but we don't have enough to get to the 60-vote threshold. That's a problem. Or drastically change how the filibuster rule is interpreted, or simply just fire the Senate parliamentarian to push through the Save America Act past the Democratic opposition, which, again, by the way, is interesting to me. I think they should do a vote regardless, because you have a majority of Democrats even that want this. So when you have, I think 83% of all Americans want this, I think 70% of all Democrats want this, independents alike, they all majority support this. They want this. They want voter ID laws. They want to secure our elections. If we don't secure elections, nothing matters, because anybody can just simply get through, and that's a big problem with all this. And so, again, you have this opposition by the Democrats, yes, but let's put it to a vote. Let's see people, especially perhaps in some of these blue states, like, for instance, a Pennsylvania, for instance, or in some of these swing states where we have some Democrats running the state, Democratic senators that aren't voting for this, and in states where we can possibly get them out of office, let's get this to a vote. Let's get them saying, okay, well, why aren't you voting to secure our elections? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, anyone with a brain would say, okay, why would you not want this? Why would you open up the possibility for cheating, for fraud, for scandals? Again, look no further than Los Angeles. But this brings me to my next point here, and I've said this to you in the past several times. President Trump needs to do a forensic audit in just any one of these blue cities and blue states. Again, look at LA. Look at the last mayoral race. Look at some of these congressional races. Let's look at something from the last 2024 election. Let's pick California. California does not allow you to have a voter ID. They will not allow you to show it to them. I've tried it before in the past. I listened to Adam Carolla too, by the way. He was talking about how he went to vote recently. And he's trying to give his information to the person at the desk so he can go cast his ballot. The guy goes, so where do you live? And he's trying to say, why don't you just look at my ID? The guy goes, no, I can't even look at your ID. And it's taken him so much longer to get this information processed as your signature. You have to sign this. But the guy was getting the information wrong. And he's getting fed up with it. He goes, why don't you just look at and take the information from ID? The guy goes, I can't ask for it. I can't even look at it. This is what Gavin Newsom and the Democrats have put forth from Sacramento. They don't want this. They don't want you to be able to prove who you are. And that allows people to go in and vote who shouldn't be voting. Oh, yeah, I live at this address. Oh, yeah, oh, you sure? Yeah, okay. You're such and such? Yep, I'm that person. Okay, all right. There you go. Have at it. I mean, folks, there's so many other... I can't think of another nation that does this, except in the United States. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think Trinidad has voter ID laws on their tiny island nation in South America. I mean, how is it that the United States, the freest nation on earth, the greatest nation on earth, the largest nation in terms of, obviously, political capital, how the hell do we not have voter ID laws voting in our federal, even in our state and local elections? How do we not have voter ID laws in place to ensure that we're not having people casting ballots that should not, when we have at least 100,000 people, 100 million people, I don't want to lowball that, people in this country that shouldn't be here. You tell me none of them vote? Yeah, give me a break on that one. Now, it's probably Thune's worst nightmare, though, for many different reasons. Trump is really unpredictable, and you have Thune's loyalty to his conference, and of course the Senate conference's loyalty to each other, not to Trump. Again, this could raise some questions as to the dynamics of this meeting. Now, does this mean he's going to put it to a vote? Does that mean he gets ready to abolish the filibuster? I can't tell you that. Thune has repeatedly rebuffed Trump's demands to abolish the filibuster, arguing that it lacks the 50 votes. I don't know about that. I think you can get enough Republicans, obviously. I think you have enough. I think you could probably get a John Fetterman or someone like John Fetterman to get in there and vote for this so we can pass it. All we need is 50, by the way. Then you get J.D. Vance to get in there and cast the tiebreaker vote. You get this passed. But here's the thing, too. Do we want Democrats to use this and nuke the filibuster for some of their bad policies? That's what you have to ask yourself as well. So it's a hit or miss. On one end of it, you are saving the voting in this country, which could probably remove some of these people that are in office that shouldn't be in office. And again, we know that the voting in this country is just wrought with fraud. We know this. We saw this with the LA race, and it was just clear as mud for anyone that was looking at it. And anyone who wasn't is obviously a schmuck, but this is the way things are. Now, Thune has also pushed back on Trump's call to fire Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough, arguing that she has made rulings that has helped Republicans and warning that firing her could sow chaos within the chamber. Again, I think Trump really, really wants to make sure that he gets this passed, and the only way he can do that is taking out the filibuster right now. So we have to ask ourselves, is this a good call to do this? What could be the ramifications of that? So again, the Democrats doing the same thing, obviously that would be detrimental. For example, if they were to push through legislation, for instance, what could they do? Only time would tell. But look at all their bad policies. And would you want them to say, okay, by the way, we're going to nuke the filibuster and we have a majority now thanks to the 2026 midterms, and we lost some seats here, lose some seats in the House, lose some seats in the Senate, and all we need is a majority votes. Obviously, that would be problematic. I think this is a common sense position. I think most people want to see this. So let's at least put this to a vote right now. Let's stop saying we don't have the votes. Let's put it to a vote. And we highlight who's not voting for it on the Democratic side or even on the Republican side. This is a good bill. This starts the ensurety that we have some semblance of voter ID integrity laws in place. And I think that's what most Americans want to see. They want to see this. And again, I think this is a step in the right direction to ensure we have free and fair elections. Because we don't have it right now, folks. That's why so many people are so disenchanted with our voting rights. They don't think voting means anything because anyone can go do it. Doesn't matter. You got the same old damn people in office. You got the same garbage coming in and out. I mean, people are upset about this. So I hope they can have a good meeting today and we'll get good reports about this. And I just hope Thune at least puts this to a vote. Let's try to get this pushed through. And then we'll highlight the people in these purple or swing states that maybe have Republicans that voted for President Trump in 2024 and say, hey, you got a Democrat you've elected in office. By the way, I don't even believe that some of these Democrats should be in there from last time. There was something very, very, I don't want to say suspect. Actually, yes, I do. Suspect. Suspect is a good word. Where Trump was winning in all these states, and they decided to vote for a Democratic senator, even though they voted for President Trump. So the thing on one end, they said, we need Trump in. We want Trump. We like Trump. We're not going to go for Kerry Lake, though. We're going to go for Ruben Gallego. Yeah, that makes sense, does it, folks? And by the way, if you look at all those maps, and by the way, I pointed this out to a couple political pundits at the time, I said, something's a little bit off here in Nevada, in Arizona, in Wisconsin, in Michigan. If you look at the maps, and I did at the time, I said, Trump won these states, again, just maybe over the finish line, but nonetheless, he won these states. Yet somehow, in each of these swing states, they decided to say, you know what? I'm going to go vote for the Democrat, though, just so I can stymie Trump's progress, which we desperately want him to do. That doesn't make any sense. And if you look at the maps by county, how they vote, it almost looks like a complete carbon copy of one another, except for one county in each. So in other words, if there was a county that was overwhelmingly red for Trump, it was overwhelmingly blue for the Democratic candidate. And I thought to myself, so you have one county in every one of these states? They weren't even major counties. They weren't even, it wasn't like Wayne County, for instance, in Michigan, or, it wasn't even Maricopa County in Arizona. It wasn't a county like that. But it was just one county in each of these states that completely flipped from being totally red to being totally blue. And that's what drove them over the finish line. So I thought that was, again, very strange, of course. But it was just one county in each of these. Everything else was the same shade, same exact color. Everything else was the same. Doesn't make any sense. Now, for instance, we looked across the entirety of the state. Okay, we look at it and say, okay, this person's winning greatly here, here, and here. It's this, completely different. Then I could say, okay, people want this candidate. But the idea that it was just one county in every one of these states, something is very, very wrong. And that's why I said we need to audit these voting machines. That'd be a great place to start. Most people, by the way, were looking at the presidential race. They were ignoring the senatorial races, and especially a lot of these swing states. But then we would have 57 senators and not 53 in these 4 swing states. So in other words, we had Kerry Lake, Sam Brown, Eric Vordy, and I forgot the other one in Michigan who ran against Alyssa Slotkin. It would be much easier to pass this now. So that's why elections matter, folks. This is why all this is very, very important, and I think it's great that Trump is highlighting this. He's absolutely 100% right on this. This is a good idea. Let's get this passed some way. But that's the way to go about this. Moving on, let's not waste any bit of any time. Now, Trump is now reluctant now to sign the sweeping bipartisan housing bill that could boost housing in the U.S. housing supply, lower costs for millions of renters and buyers across the country. So he doesn't want to sign the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which again won overwhelmingly in both the House and Senate, 358 to 32 in the House and 85 to 5 in the Senate just the day before. Now heading to Trump's desk, he doesn't want to have the ceremony necessary to sign this because, again, he's mad about this SAVE Act not being passed. He wants that passed and he wants this done soon. By the way, I don't blame him. This is something he's running on that's actually very good. This is something that helps America become more freer, more fairer. That's what we talk about all the time. So, again, why would the Democrats who talk about freedom and fair, everything's great for everybody, why would you not want that in every single state? Ask yourself that question. Because it works to their advantage. 3 out of 4 illegal aliens vote Democrat. Again, you can go look that up if you don't believe me, but that's why they utilize it. This is how they stay in power. This is why they want it. And this is why it's probably never going to be voted on by the Democrats. But again, Thune should obviously push this forward. So Trump is getting a little bit of backlash for that. Again, this is bipartisan across the aisles. People are voting for this. I'm sure in time he will sign this, but he's not going to highlight this as time goes on. And again, you're going to get a boost in housing supply, roughly, lowering housing costs for renters and buyers, and shift more control to local governments versus the federal government. That's what they're allocating here. I'll let you read that in Time Magazine. I do want to talk about this last article. I know we're short on time right now. We got about 4 minutes remaining in the broadcast. Let me go over this really quickly with you, even though I did want to spend some time with this. And if I don't cover the entirety of this today, we'll go over it again tomorrow. This comes from the Federalist. It says, the Social Security crisis is even worse than we thought. Of course it's worse than we thought. We're getting ourselves robbed blind from this. The Social Security Administration recently announced that the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund will run out of money by late 2032. So that means the government is no longer able to pay retirees their full promised benefits that they've put into their entire lives at that time. Why is that? So in other words, we have a trust fund that people pay into, right? When they start working, unless of course you're paying into a pension program, like educators, for instance. Where's the money going then? Why is there no money in there? Well, if you listen to my program for any length of time, not too long ago, I explained to you that anytime there was a surplus in the Social Security Administration Trust Fund, that money was taken out and put into the U.S. Treasury. So that means all the money people were putting in there, since its inception in the 1930s, all that money that was in there, that was sitting in there, every single year was taken out and put into the Treasury. Well, then you add in programs like welfare and this and that and what have you. The Great Society programs that LBJ ushered upon us that made us not so great. You're losing money. So that money that could have stayed in there and obviously been used at a later time. Inflation, again, is the number one culprit of this. You need more people paying into the system to make up for the people that are already in the system. And they need more money in order to sustain themselves. That's the way it works. And it's not too far away from the Medicare Trust Fund that will also run out of money by 2033 as well. So again, both are kind of in lockstep with one another. And again, we're rapidly approaching the crisis for retirees now. But isn't that something? You've paid your whole life into this, and now they're saying, you know what? You don't have any money. We just don't have. We're running out of money. We can't meet this fulfillment to you. Thank you for paying in for, 40, 45, 50 years of your working career. You could have put that into a, stock, mutual fund, and gotten so much more money back for yourself to have on your own. But we've decided, no, we just can't pay you now. You want to talk about failure? So when the Social Security Trust Fund runs out of money in 6 years from now, or earlier, possibly, the projected income from payroll taxes will only cover 78% of the promised benefits. So you're going to be greatly reduced as to what you have been offered, what you've been promised. And then the government will then have to borrow more money. Reduce benefits, raise taxes, extend the retirement age. That's another possibility too. Or they could even cut other spending, if that ever is an issue for either party, by the way. I don't see that being one of the things they could utilize. Most of these options would be inflationary or recessionary, or both. Isn't that nice? So that's what you have to look forward to in the near future. The draining of the Social Security Trust Fund is just a short-term crisis that has arisen from a long-term problem. And that long-term problem is you've been robbed blind by government spending, inflation. You need more money to be put into the Treasury in order to fund a lot of the bloated spending. What are we trying to allocate money for in the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act? How much money are we trying to put in there? Quite a bit of money. Are we not? $1.5 trillion? Where's that going to come from? Where do we get that money from? More than half of all federal spending goes to entitlement programs, $3.82 trillion out of a $7.01 trillion overall budget in fiscal year 2025. So we talk about bloated spending. Where does it all begin? It begins in Capitol Hill. That's exactly where it is, right inside the Beltway. They've been stealing your retirement money blind from you for God knows how long. Makes you sick to your stomach just thinking about it. So that's something we can all look forward to in the near future, right, folks? That's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here. I got to run. Be good. Stay busy. God bless.